Hey, everybody, welcome to the webinar, 5 Steps to Selling Sponsorship That Actually Work. And so this title was picked deliberately because I really want to walk you through a new strategy or new strategies that work, that actually have an impact on what you're doing in terms of your sponsorship program. So the goal here is no fluff, no theory, just practical ideas and things that you can implement immediately and see a change in your sponsorship program. So that's me, Chris Bayless, sponsorship expert. Probably more appropriate to call me a sponsorship geek. And I run a company called the Sponsorship Collective. And we work in Canada and the United States with sponsorship seekers, likely you guys who are on the webinar today, basically to improve your sponsorship programs, to transform your sponsorship program, and to raise more money. And so, ultimately, our mission is to help sponsorship seekers develop best-in-class sponsorship programming. Now, I firmly believe that the best place for sponsorship sales to happen are right there in your organization. So we're not a fan of outsourcing sponsorship sales or brokerage. We want you to be doing it yourself, and that's really what my practice is focused on, what our company, the Sponsorship Collective, is focused on, and that's what this webinar is going to be focused on. So if you happen to be a broker, welcome. You're certainly welcome here, but I will still maintain that the very best people to sell sponsorship are those who have a vested interest in the outcomes, and that's you. So don't send me an email asking me if I'll sell sponsorship on your behalf. The answer is no, I won't. So we're going to do questions probably a bit differently than what you're used to on typical webinars, probably exactly what you're used to if you've done a webinar with me in the past. But rather than asking questions live, I get a lot of feedback or I have gotten a lot of feedback on webinars that I've done in the past, and people have said, don't take questions during the session. It disrupts the flow. So instead, you'll see the bottom right-hand corner, at least the bottom right-hand corner on my screen, you can submit a question. And what will happen is it will be emailed to me, and then I'll answer that question over the next couple of business days. So go ahead, as we're going through the webinar, submit your questions. Once the webinar is over, that question box is going to vanish. So don't wait until the end hoping that the question box is going to hang around and wait for you. It's not going to. So when I receive your question, I'll give it some thought, and I'll put together some blog posts and resources that will help you get through your challenge. So send questions and then give me a couple days to answer them. Now, what good is a sponsorship webinar without a sponsor? And so this webinar is brought to you by the Virtual Sponsorship Conference, which is, of course, our flagship education event run entirely online. So no travel costs, no downtime, no rubber chicken lunch, all very attractive, I'm sure. But the most attractive part is that we spend a day together digitally talking about everything from sponsorship trends, prospecting like a pro, valuation secrets revealed, sponsorship packages that work. We go through activation, fulfillment, and renewal. Everything is recorded for you to keep for as long as you'd like to. We do live coaching and Q&A, I should say, throughout the day. And also, we've put together a ton of templates and resources for you to use. For example, a valuation calculator preloaded with values. So all sessions are yours to keep, all templates are yours to keep. It's while the idea of a full day online workshop sounds daunting, feedback has been incredible. We've been doing it for 3 years now, and of course we survey after every conference, and people love it. People are always surprised at actually how easy it is to attend a digital or a virtual event. So anyway, I'm going to send you a special link, a special offer following the webinar. I'm not going to tell you when it is. I'm not going to tell you any more about it. You're going to have to actually just open the email and read about it, or go ahead and visit the website. I'll send you all the stuff, and I'd love to see you there. Now, we're off. We're diving in. Step one. So there are 5 steps required for you to be successful in sponsorship. The first and most important step, I would argue maybe even the only step, is to change your mindset about sponsorship, right? This is also the most challenging of the 5 steps, but you have to change your mindset. What does that mean exactly? Well, first of all, now I recognize that not everybody on the webinar is a charity or not for profit, but the bulk, the overwhelming majority of those that we work with are in the charitable or cause sponsorship sector. That includes hospitals, education, and I would put not for profits who maybe aren't charities in that camp as well. Sponsorship is not philanthropy. It's not corporate giving. It's not corporate foundations. It's not CSR, corporate social responsibility. It's not really employee engagement. It's not you writing a note, a letter, a package to a company who has a lot of money, asking them for some of that money because you can do good in the world. That is not sponsorship. If you're practicing that and it's working, go for it. Fill your boots. But what you're not doing is practicing sponsorship. You're not practicing the multi-billion-dollar a year discipline called sponsorship, which means you're leaving significant cash on the table. If you send a sponsorship package, a so-called sponsorship package to a company, ask them for money so that you can help the kids, and you're going to put their logo on stuff, you call it sponsorship, you are not practicing sponsorship. So do not reflect on that practice, on what you're doing if you're combining philanthropy and sponsorship, and try to apply these principles as we go through this webinar. Sponsorship is a completely, radically different animal. It is not philanthropy. In fact, I would go so far as to say, and so would your sponsors, that your cause is irrelevant. Now, I was actually doing a speaking tour with sponsors, with the people with the money, and I stood up at the front and said, "Hey, all charities, your cause is secondary." And a sponsor, a brand, stopped me and said, "No, Chris, the cause is not secondary. The cause is completely irrelevant to us. We are not paying for your mission, your vision, the change you're trying to happen in the world. What we're trying to do is connect with you and your cause to appeal to our target audience. And you achieving your mission is not a requirement. You reporting back to us about how many trees you've saved, how many kids you've helped, that's not what we're looking for. What we as brands, as companies, as sponsors are looking for is access to a particular audience. And if your sponsorship packages are packed, are full of mission, vision, information, you are alienating your sponsors. They're not interested in that. You are practicing philanthropy. And while it may work in that some money comes in, you are not tapping into the multi-billion-dollar a year sponsorship industry. In other words, you're calling it sponsorship, but you're not practicing it. This is why it requires a mindset shift. So the other thing I'd like to impress upon you today is that sponsorship is a verb. We think that sponsorship is synonymous with logo placement, right? Oh, go get a sponsor, your board, your CEO, your boss says. What they really mean is go get money from a company and we'll put their logo on something. I hate to break it to you. That's not sponsorship. Sponsorship is a verb. It's an activity that companies engage in order to achieve a particular goal. Now, if I were to ask you what Nike or Reebok or Converse was trying to achieve, you would tell me without hesitation, or Honda or Ford, to sell products. Sponsorship is an activity taken in order to sell products. If putting a logo on something doesn't help them sell a product, then you are not then you're not engaging them. You're not helping them achieve their goal. So sponsorship is a verb. If you think of sponsorship as an action, it's not the placement of logos. It's the borrowing from multiple disciplines of advertising and marketing. Putting a logo on something is actually one very small discipline of advertising that is building awareness. Sponsorship allows you to reach across all aspects of social media, digital marketing, advertising, sampling, experiential. It lets you reach across multiple disciplines and pull them all together into a series of items that achieve a particular end. So if what you're doing are e-blasts and logo placement, you're actually only practicing probably 5, maybe 10% of the sponsorship spectrum. So instead think of sponsorship as a way of pulling together multiple marketing, advertising, communications, human resources, and sales disciplines, bringing them all together into a holistic package to help a sponsor achieve their primary goal. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. There's no way to know what a sponsor's primary goal is without asking them directly. We can't make those assumptions on behalf of our sponsors. Which leads me to the next mindset shift. That I'm having trouble with that word, obviously. So the next item that you have to realize or let go of is that actually there's no such thing as sponsors, right? If sponsorship is a verb, then saying what do sponsors want is like asking what does running want. Well, running's not really a thing. It's not an entity. It's a means to an end. So sponsors don't exist. I'll tell you, when I started in the sponsorship space, I worked in sales. I worked in corporate sales, and I had a sponsorship budget where I could invest in sponsorship in order to help me sell more products. By virtue of giving money to organizations in order to sell more products, excuse me, I did not become a sponsor. I continued my life as a corporate salesperson. I just used sponsorship to help me achieve my goals, my quarterly goals, so that I could feed my family, so that my company could be successful. So there's no such thing as sponsors. There are companies who have particular goals, and they'll use sponsorship to achieve those goals, just like they'll use sales, communications, marketing, advertising. Sponsorship is one more tool. So we're going to call companies sponsors throughout this webinar, but actually, there's no such thing as sponsors. We don't know what sponsors want. We can't say what sponsors want because sponsorship is an action that companies take to achieve a particular end. So mindset shift. You have to change your mind first. None of these principles work if you apply them to gold, silver, bronze packages that you send out to companies in hopes that they'll give you money because they have lots, because your need is very strong, because you're a good cause, because you know someone within their organization and they owe you. None of those things are sponsorship. Those things may work, they may happen, but sponsorship is a standalone discipline that that offers significant revenue opportunities. So change your mind first. Then you have to move on to the next steps. Step 2, knowing your value. So here's current valuation practice in the sector. Right? You throw up your hands. I don't know what this is worth. Let's ask for 50,000 and see what happens. Or worse yet, we have a gala, we have a golf tournament, we have an event, we have a program. And in order to run this program, sponsorship is not just events. But before you ask me, how do I apply sponsorship if I'm running a program or if I need XYZ instead? What you're looking for sponsorship for is irrelevant. It does not actually change sponsorship best practice or principles. So just because something costs you 50,000 doesn't mean it's worth 50,000 to a sponsor. So current practice is we need 100 grand. Let's make title sponsorship 50,000, and then we'll make mid-level sponsorship at 15,000, and then entry-level sponsorship at 5,000. In other words, you completely and utterly make up what your opportunities are worth. Let me tell you something. Your sponsors can tell. How can they tell? Because they hire firms like mine to do a valuation for them, to tell them whether or not they're getting good return on investment. And in fact, those organizations that you're competing against for sponsorship revenue hire the sponsorship collective to do valuations for them, to tell them what their opportunities are worth. So if you are guessing still in this day and age at what your opportunities are worth, you're in big trouble, and you are not practicing sponsorship. Frankly, if you don't know your value, you are not engaging in sponsorship, and it is a high risk scenario for you to be participating in. So let me share with you a case study. 2 marathons, Marathon A and Marathon B. I know, very inventive. Marathon A was offering free shoes, not these free shoes, but free sports shoes for the first 1,000 people that register. Marathon A was giving away 1,000 free shoes. Marathon B also giving away 1,000 free shoes to everyone who registers. The difference is that Marathon A did a valuation and they realized that there was a value attached to the right to give away free shoes to the company. So they went to Dave, their contact, their sponsor, and said, "We want you to give us X dollars and we'll give you the right to give away free shoes." Marathon B, on the other hand, thought, "Wow, free shoes, isn't that nice? We're going to use these free shows to give everyone a better time at our marathon, and then they'll want to come back and we'll add all this value." But because Dave at the company, at the sponsor, is being so kind to us, we could never ask him for money as well because we feel like we're overstepping. So Marathon A knew their value, did evaluation, sold this opportunity to Dave. Marathon B had no idea what their value was, and so they were at a disadvantage. Here's the thing, though. They were both selling to the same company. They were both talking to the same contact within the same company. Guess how much money Marathon A was getting in addition to the free shoes? $50,000. This happened over the course of 5 years. That's $250,000 that Marathon A was pocketing in addition to the free shoes, which also means that Marathon B, by virtue of not knowing their value, left $250,000 on the table. But sure, they got free shoes. And by the way, this individual pictured here with all the money is not Marathon A. It's Dave. Why? Because Dave knew that Marathon A was valued appropriately and he happily paid the $50,000 rights fees. That's standard, normal, best practice. But the reason he's laughing is because Marathon B had no idea what their value was. Dave wasn't about to tell them. So what does that mean? Is that Dave basically paid on average $25,000 per opportunity. And Dave got a great big bonus at the end of the year. Now, I don't want to make Dave seem like a bad guy. He's just doing his job. But I'll tell you, Marathon A and Marathon B were both charity events, which means that Marathon B raised negative $250,000 and instead it went into Dave's pocket. You must do evaluation. This is no longer optional. It hasn't been optional for probably 20 years, but certainly not within the last 5. If you don't do evaluation, you are leaving money on the table. You're at a disadvantageous place in your negotiations. You absolutely must do evaluation. So what the heck is evaluation? Well, this is our bread and butter. This is what we do at the Sponsorship Collective. And we start every single process with the question, how would my sponsor get this exposure, get this benefit, get this asset without me? Giving away free shoes at a marathon is something Dave can easily do without either Marathon A or Marathon B. And so the first thing that we did with Marathon A was looked at the cost of delivering samples. And so if you're putting logos on stuff, well, we would call that awareness. And we would say that the equivalency is small ads in a publication targeting your audience. So if I were Dave and I wanted to raise awareness of my product, which almost nobody does, but let's say Dave did have that interest, then he could either buy a small ad in a publication or he could pay you to put your logo on something. You have to know what the actual value is to do that. Dave could also run a social media campaign and target your followers and never give you a penny. But here's the funny thing. Here's the interesting thing. If you run a social media campaign targeting your followers, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, they will actually tell you what others are paying to get in front of the same audience. In other words, you'll know exactly what Dave would have to pay in order to advertise to your audience without you. So there are multiple ways for you to really ask the question, how would my sponsor get this asset, get this exposure, get this opportunity without me? That's at its core, at its heart, what we do when we do evaluation and what we recommend to people. Now, at the virtual sponsorship conference, of course, we actually have created a pre-populated, actually 3 valuation calculators with 3 different audiences We spend an hour talking valuation, or close to an hour talking valuation, and then you actually get a working valuation calculator. So if you're in the stage where you need to do a valuation, and you're not in a position where you can hire a consulting firm, or you don't know how to do it yourself, therefore you either need to learn. I'm going to send you a blog post that explains to you how to do that. Or you need to accelerate your learning, in which case you'll join me at the conference, or you need to hire outside help. But not doing evaluation is just not an option. It is something you can do yourself. It's just incredibly boring. So watch your email for a blog post that really is the definitive guide to valuation. It's like a 4,000 word blog post with lots and lots of information. It tells you exactly how to do it. So anyway, valuation must be done. You can do it. It's just boring. Well, I don't think it's boring, but pretty much everyone else on earth does. Okay, step 3. Always, always, always provide a fulfillment report to your sponsors, right? To the companies that you're working with. Before you ask, should you give it to those who are sponsoring at the $500 level? Yes. At the $1 million level? Yes. It's irrelevant how big the sponsor is. You absolutely must provide them a fulfillment report, or rather how much money they're giving you, or how big they are. So I'm going to share with you a story. I had closed a sponsorship deal at the $25,000 level. The idea was that this company would send a sales rep to collect ballots from people. And the ballot was to ask for like an insurance quote, or like a professional services quote, something like that. It was a business to business opportunity. So the sponsor sent their salesperson. The sponsor set up camp at my conference that had around 3,000 people, and she collected ballots all day. At the end of the conference, I said, "Hey, Sally, how did it go?" Sally said, "It was great. It was wonderful. I had a great time. Thanks so much. See you next year." Sally jumped on a plane, jumped on a flight, and away she went. So a week later, I called Dave, Sally's boss, different Dave. I called Dave, Sally's boss. And I told him, I have a fulfillment report for you. I'd like to show you that we delivered on everything we said we would. And Dave said, "Chris, don't bother." So this is on the phone. I give him a call, and he said, "Chris, don't bother. There's no need to send me a fulfillment report. I'm not interested." I said, "Why? What happened?" He said, "Well, we expect around 10% of the people at a conference to fill out a ballot. And we only had 3. I said, "Well, 3% is not great." He said, "No, Chris, we only had 3 ballots. We expected 3,000 ballots, which means we paid about $8,000 per ballot. And since the starting price of a insurance package with us is only $3,000, we're at a loss even if we had a 100% conversion rate, which we don't." So this is how sponsors think. This is how companies think. And I said, "Okay, oh my goodness, what happened? What went wrong?" And he said, "Well, Sally told me that your event was poorly attended. You put her in the corner and no one visited her booth." So as Dave's talking, I'm flipping through my fulfillment report, and there's picture after picture after picture of Sally sitting behind her exhibit booth texting. And surrounding her are literally thousands and thousands of business professionals. She was just not doing her job. So I said, "Dave, look, I'm sending this thing to you. I want you to turn to page 7 and have a look. Tell me what you see." Sure enough, there's Sally texting away. So I said, "Listen, Dave, come back next year, but don't send Sally. Instead, send me 2 iPads. I'm going to auction them off in exchange for people filling out ballots." That year, and I'm going to have my team do it, not Sally. I'm going to take full accountability for this. That year, the next year, we overflowed the ballot box. That's how many we got. And so then I provided a fulfillment report for Dave, and I said, "Come back, but sign a multi-year agreement," and he did. So in other words, a PDF document that I created with not with an iPhone, because they weren't around then, with like a portable camera and Microsoft Word, was enough to close a $125,000 multi-year sponsorship deal. You must be doing a fulfillment report. So what goes into a fulfillment report? Really simple. You take a picture of every single thing you promised your sponsor: logos, program ads, people, everything. right? If samples, line them up on a table, take a picture of the samples, take screenshots of web traffic and logo placements, social media, earned and purchased media. You want everything you promised your sponsor. Put it all together in a report with stats from your event or your program if you're not running events or campaign, along with all of the pictures and samples, and call a meeting. Now, the way that I like to do this, I take pictures of everything and then I provide a chart saying, here's everything we promised and its value because you've done a valuation, and then everything we delivered and the actual value of what we delivered. So you've proven that you delivered everything. You're showing the return on investment in your fulfillment report. And then within 2 weeks of your event, call a meeting with your sponsor. The idea is that you deliver the fulfillment report, ask them for feedback, ask them what they thought, and then confirm them for the following year. Now, had I done what most people do with Dave and Sally, I would have assumed they had a good time. And then the next fall, when it's time to close my sponsors again, I would have called Dave or emailed Dave or sent a sponsorship package, hoping he'd come back. He's already in budget. He's already in my budget that he's going to come back. At that point, Dave would say, "Oh, we just didn't get the budget that we expected, so we can't come. We just can't be part of this event anymore." In other words, Dave would lie to save face, and I would go to my boss and say, "Darn, I thought they'd come back, but they didn't." That's not a great place to be in, but that's a pretty typical sales process, I'd say, for most sponsorship seekers. Instead, you sit down with your Dave within a week or two of the event, and if something went wrong, you're going to learn that it went wrong, and then you can fix it. Right. And at that meeting, you can ask them to come back and get them to sign an agreement. They may not pay until the next year, but that doesn't matter. Right? You've got them on board as a sponsor. That's called renewal, and an absolute game changer. Now, whether or not you decide to tell your boss that you've closed 60, 70, 80% of next year's revenue before the year even opens, that's your business. But nevertheless, it's just such a better, stronger position to be in when you're opening your fiscal year knowing where 70% of your revenue is going to come from because you provided a fulfillment report. Step 4, stop using the sponsorship package to make the sale. Stop using the sponsorship package to make the sale. So when I first started in sponsorship sales, when I became a sponsorship seeker, so I was no longer in corporate sales. I was no longer in, or so I thought, I was no longer in a sponsor. I was on the other side of the desk. I did what everyone else did in the sector at the time, and I started to measure foolishly how many sponsorship packages I fired out the door. Every week, my boss would say to me, "Hey, Chris, how many sponsorship packages did you get out the door this week?" And I would say, 387. And he would pat me on the head, basically, and say, "Great job. Next week, make it 400." But that was it. That's how we measured success. How many sponsorship packages we're firing out the door. Meanwhile, when I was a sponsor, I didn't read a single sponsorship package. It's just not how sponsorship is done. So anyway, 6 months into my job, no money has come in. My phone is never ringing. I'm not hearing from anyone. But I continue to send out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sponsorship packages every single week. Then one day my phone rings. I answer the phone. "Hello? Hey, Chris, this is Dave calling from sponsorship company X. We'd like you to come in and pitch against 2 other similar organizations about how you would work with us. If we chose your organization to be our property of choice, to be where we invest our sponsorship, our cause marketing, and our employee engagement dollars." I was floored. It had worked. So I said, "Okay, Dave, tell me though, what level are you interested in? Gold, silver, or bronze? But of course, I'll make something custom if you'd like." And there was silence. Dave said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I've been sending you sponsorship packages literally every week, right? You're on my list because you have so much money that I've been sending you in just a ton of sponsorship packages." Dave said, "Chris, I'm going to be honest with you. We haven't read a sponsorship package in 10 years." And this was many years ago. He said, "We get over 10,000 unsolicited, unrequested, and unwanted sponsorship packages every single month. 10,000 a month. That's 500 per business day. We have a whole department that does nothing but says no thank you. And now they have an online form that just automatically says no thank you. We haven't read a sponsorship package in years." The reason you're being invited to pitch is because we did the market research, and our target market, our target audience are 40-year-old high net worth moms who live in the suburbs, have 3 kids. Those kids play hockey, and those moms prefer Lexus or BMW. That's it. That's our target market. It was not none of these companies, by the way. They were a toy company, but that was their target audience. That's the reason you've been invited. And the other 2 organizations that we've invited to come and pitch also rank highly among that audience. All we want you to do is come in and talk to us about how you would manage our account. And from that, we're going to choose the best organization. If your primary strategy is sending sponsorship packages out into the world and hoping money comes in, you are in big trouble and you're leaving serious dollars on the table. That day, I changed everything about my sponsorship sales process. We did our own market research. We're going to talk about that next. We did our own market research, and then using that data, using that information, reached out in a very targeted way to organizations, and we tripled our revenue within 2 years using that strategy. It works. It works very well, but it requires a significant change in mindset, and it requires you to stop doing the things that just aren't working, like sending sponsorship packages out into the wilderness and hoping they'll bring in money for you. Now, if you're going to create a sponsorship proposal, my favorite way to sell sponsorship is, in fact, to never create a sponsorship package. But that doesn't work for everyone, mostly because they're either uncomfortable with the idea or their boss forces them to make one anyway. So do what you have to do to keep your job. I took a different approach to sponsorship sales, which is probably why I'm self-employed today. But anyway, I have a sort of a approved proposal checklist. You must focus on audience, and you must do so in the 50% rule. Middle class families, people who care about our cause, that's not an audience. That's, in fact, not even remotely relevant. That's not the kind of data you want to focus on. 50% of your sponsorship package must focus on audience. You want demographic information, psychographic information, purchasing habits. You want at least 30 data points, and we're going to talk about that in a second. I'm ruining step 5 for you, but it's important. Do not include charts, grids, levels, or prices, and definitely don't include a cutout for someone to send you a check or include their credit card information and buy off the shelf one of your sponsorship opportunities. All you want to do is get your prospects to pick up the phone and call you. You want to talk to these people. If you don't have time to talk to your prospects, you're too busy. If you don't have time to talk to the people you're trying to sell to, you're too busy. You either need to hire more staff, you need to change your focus. You will not be successful unless you actually treat your prospects, give them the attention that they need and deserve. If you're not willing to, believe me, someone with an identical audience to yours, and there are many, will give them the attention they want. So you are not trying to get them to make a purchase from your sponsorship package. You want them to talk to you. Include case studies and examples of your work with sponsors, right? Of the things that you've done with sponsors that help them achieve their goals. That's what a sponsorship package should include. It's more, it's an opportunity for you to showcase how sophisticated your sponsorship program is versus mission, vision, gold, silver, bronze, send us money here, and then in really fine print on the last page. But if you don't see something you like, we'd be willing to create a custom package. Do not create a sponsorship package like that. This is what you want to be doing. Okay, step 5, know your audience. You must know your audience. No audience, no sponsorship. The end. That's it, right? Valuation protects you. It puts you in a position to be able to negotiate and sell your opportunities, improve return on investment. That's a non-negotiable. Knowing your audience is the most important step in the sales process, I would argue. Not creating a sponsorship package. Okay, so here's what sponsors want to know about your audience. They want demographic information, right? Male, female, middle class, that's not enough. They want deep demographic information. They want buying behavior. What kind of things does your audience purchase? They want to know within the next 18 months how likely, or depending on the product, it could be sooner than 18 months, but what kind of things your audience is going to purchase. They want to know preferred brands, not just whether or not they own a car. Everyone owns a car, at least in Canada and the United States, everyone seems to own a car. They want to know what brand of car and why, whether or not you can influence a purchase. Can you say that 87% of your audience would change a purchase based on sponsorship of your opportunities? Do you even know what that number is? If you're a charity, um, there is in fact data and stats in Canada and the United States that prospects, sponsors, companies can look at that will tell them what the average is. How do you compare to that benchmark? If you don't know, you're at a serious disadvantage. Job titles, industries, if you're in the business to business market, right? If you have a conference, if you're a membership organization, decision-making capacity of your audience, again, if you're business to business or you know membership or run a conference. Sponsors want to know a lot about your audience. Sponsorship is 100% about a company connecting to their target audience with your help. If you can't help them do that, then they won't work with you. So, how do you get this information? I'm going to give you a top secret strategy that we use with all of our clients. It's the strategy we write about in our blog posts. It's the strategy that we go deep into during the virtual sponsorship conference. This is not the kind of pretend strategy that I'm going to share with you today, but we do something different. This is the real deal. It's what we do. So how do we get this information? We have a pro SurveyMonkey account, which costs us around $350 per year. We do two e-blasts to the database, to our client's database. Just two, one on Tuesday at 10 a.m., one on Thursday at 10 a.m. We offer a chance to win one of three $25 gift cards to whatever, Starbucks, Tim Hortons if you're in Canada, um, a local restaurant, or perhaps the products of a sponsor. Just that's it. You filled out the survey, entered a chance to win one of three gift cards. That's enough for us to get 30 plus data points on our audiences with 95% confidence interval and a 5% margin of error. In other words, an outstanding response rate. We've surveyed literally millions of people across Canada and the United States, and a couple 100,000 in Australia, as it turns out. But again, our focus is in Canada and the United States. And so we have surveyed millions and millions and millions of individuals. We've worked with literally hundreds of organizations to do this work. And we have never had a problem getting people to respond. There's this strange belief that surveys don't work, or people won't fill out surveys, or surveys will irritate people. I don't know where these ideas came from, but they're incorrect, at least in my experience. So this is it. Pro SurveyMonkey account, because it lets you go deeper into the data than a free one. They don't pay me to tell anyone this. I just happen to really like Pro SurveyMonkey, and we have to use Pro. Although I understand there are all kinds of other survey tools. My advice, if this is where you're trying to save money, I would not recommend. I would not recommend it. You want to buy or use a good survey product to get this data. That's it. A couple of e-blasts. I would say typically, if we survey 50,000 people, we might get 2 complaints, but 2 out of 50,000 is nothing. So that's what we do to get the data required for sponsors to make decisions, required to build out activation ideas. We have used this process recently for 2 major multi-year naming right opportunities in the millions of dollars. So believe me when I tell you the survey data is incredibly valuable when combined with a proper valuation. Audience data is the most important thing you can offer a sponsor. Valuation protects you. Audience data, really, your sponsor is looking to that to protect them, your corporate partner. Okay, so remember, questions. Enter them immediately because they're going to vanish. The question box is going to vanish as soon as the webinar wraps up. Give me a couple of 2 business days to respond, and I'll typically do so with a blog post or 2 to help guide you on your way. Don't forget, I'm also going to send you a link with a special offer following this webinar. So please read the email that I'm going to send you. That email is going to have a recording of the webinar itself. I'm going to include some blog posts that will help you do some of the things that we've discussed today. And if you need to go a little bit deeper into these concepts, join us for the virtual sponsorship conference. Again, it's our flagship education event. We do it entirely online. which is really ideally suited for those who don't have time to travel, don't want to travel, or maybe you want to buy a pass and actually watch it as a team with your entire shop. You can do that. No travel costs, no downtime, no rubber chicken lunch. We cover sponsorship trends, how to prospect, how to do evaluation. You get three working valuation calculators. We talk about sponsorship packages, how to structure a package based on these principles. I also provide a template and a design template so that you can see what it looks like designed after the fact. And then we talk about activation, fulfillment, and renewal. And of course, we go deep into audience data. And those who attend the virtual sponsorship conference actually also get our survey questions, like literally a survey copied and pasted that we used with a client to close a 7-figure sponsorship deal. We give those questions to conference attendees as well. All sessions are recorded, yours to keep. So remember, watch for a link and a special offer that's going to come out within a couple days of this webinar. Final parting thought. The sponsorship proposal does not make the sale. You do. You're far better off leaving the sponsorship package at home and going out and talking to sponsors than you staying at the office and sending a sponsorship package out to do the work. So go out, have real conversations with real people, and talk about how you can help a sponsor achieve their goals. Thank you so much. Remember to check your email, and we'll talk soon. Take care.